Hey everybody, welcome to McFarland Minutes. I'm Natalie McFarland, founder and president of McFarland Productions, director at Off Your Rocker Films, and your host. In these episodes, you can expect deleted scenes, in-depth campaign reviews, project highlights, marketing concepts, book reviews, and a deep dive into the creative process at Off Your Rocker Films. We'll also be covering invaluable lessons on mentorship, leadership, and the business of it all. We are so excited to be releasing our episodes every Sunday as your soft launch to Monday. Hey everybody, welcome to McFarland Minutes, your soft launch to Monday. Today, I am very excited to introduce you to one of our new friends, James Sellars, who is the founder and CEO of Sellmark Corporation, who owns a plethora of brands in the outdoor industry, primarily in gun accessory type stuff. I'm really excited for you guys to get to know him. James, it's been a pleasure to get to know you, working with you through Ag Texas Farm Credit Services and doing the piece on Sellmark Ranch and getting to see the beautiful place that you guys have built and are still building onto, and the range and all of that was so much fun. So I really appreciate you jumping on and being part of it.
Natalie, it's my pleasure to be here today. I've enjoyed meeting you as well, and I know that we're going to have another industry, very interesting conversation. Probably we'll have to schedule more. So,
Yeah, for sure. James, you being a successful owner, founder, CEO of a plethora of brands rather than just one is such a difficult thing. Being an entrepreneur of one is hard enough. Having a multitude of them is a whole nother level that I think a lot of people have aspirations to do, but maybe haven't quite figured it out. So I would love to talk about one. Let's go through your brands. Let's talk some about that. I'd love to hear
absolutely.
your story as a founder.
Well, I think our brands are a lot like our children. So, that each has a unique origin story and a story arc. I think that where they end up sometimes a little different when you first imagine them or when they came to creation. But so our first successful brand was launched in 2007, Sitemark, and in 2007. Um, we were looking around the industry and we were looking for an opportunity and what we could do something. I had some experience launching some optics brands, and those projects came to end. And those are coming from like night vision background, which we're still very strong in. But at that time, was looking at the marketplace, and AR-15 was kind of this new thing that people were talking about. And at that time, none of the optics companies were really committed to supporting that. They kept showing their traditional bolt action and more traditional hunting. So we decided, what AR-15 might be a popular rifle. It's very versatile. There's a lot of excitement about it, and a very small, but
Pretty accessible from like a purchasability standpoint too.
yeah, it opened up so many new people to hunting and shooting, and just kind of transformed the whole industry. So Sidemark was launched to make the R15 the fully capable platform it was. Started with red dots and bore sights and laser sights, and then we came out with tactical scopes. So a lot of really first of in the industry, and promoted the R15 platform, and had some tremendous success right out of the gate. 2009, we saw that there's opportunities for a need in our space for young people to learn and get excited coming in the hunting shooting sports. Our demographics, are leaning older, and there wasn't enough diversity in the industry base, and the demographics were, if we continue that path, we would start having trouble as an industry.
Sure.
So we needed to get more people to do the outdoor sports. So we launched Firefield, and Firefield was a brand that really spoke to young, energetic, people that want to go out and do something and accomplish something
Hmm.
different, and looking for that great experience. So Firefield really spoke to new shooters looking for something different, and that's been a lot of fun. We brought a lot of new people into the industry with that. Around that time, came out with Pulsar, launched Pulsar, and that was just it seemed like an overnight success, but it took several years to get the market to start paying attention
Oh
with that.
yeah,
But we were
there's no
original
such thing as
pioneering.
overnight success, but
Yeah,
man,
yeah, that's
if I've said Pulsar in a conversation, people are like Pulsar, you
yeah.
know, they pop
I
up.
mean,
So for sure.
that's yeah. What is it? 15 years now later or something. So or
Yeah.
17 years later. So it's anyways. I can't believe it's been that long. Um, but we pioneered the first like dedicated digital night scope with Pulsar, and then we really popularized thermal as a important part
Mhm.
of the tool set for
Mhm.
night hunting, and now it's becoming indispensable if you want to do cow deer or hog hunting, and even people now using it for daytime hunting because you can
Yeah.
detect
My
detect.
husband actually just went pig hunting in Texas with a couple of friends of ours, and, at night, of course, because it's pig hunting, and they used a night vision scope and a thermal scope, and my husband's like, "I'm never going back now that I've seen a thermal," you know,
Night
so
hunting is absolutely so insanely fun. It's just a
Mhm.
totally different experience. It's very addictive. Um, I say take your friends out, but expect them to, pick up a new hobby if they haven't done it
Yeah,
before.
for
So,
sure.
yeah. So I love the stories. I mean, one of the great things about our brands is that we get to be part of that journey with people, the experience that they have and those memories that they've created. That really is everything at the end of the day. And I just think it's so great that so many people experience like you're describing there.
Yeah.
Um, so after Pulsar, we went down the discussion of like, well, it takes a long time to launch a new brand. It
Mhm.
takes so much effort and it takes so much. It's a very expensive thing to do, very risky.
Resources, yeah,
Yeah, I would say for every brand we have now, we probably had a brand that we've launched that wasn't successful. So if you're
sure.
not willing to fail tremendously awfully in a big public space, then multiple brands, even launching a brand's not that
Not that
conducive
easy.
to. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so we decided that during that time we're like there's a lot of companies that have some really great technology, and we had a few patents, and but it takes time to become an expert in a particular product category,
Oh,
and
yeah.
um, our original origin story was we were a marketing company with sales consulting. Um, but then becoming a technology company, you have to have patents in the technology. So we decided to go evaluate opportunities to acquire companies and then take their brand to the next level. And that's been interesting. Our first company that we did it with was called Kophjager. We came to change the brand to KJI. That's
Mhm.
actually an interesting story
Mostly because
about
I
the brand.
probably couldn't spell it if I tried.
Yeah. So KGI is actually was or Kophjager, as it was known when we bought it, was started by two police officers, very elite police officers in Dallas, and
Cool.
they were looking for a stable shooting platform that could provide, without question, the most accurate shot necessary when you have like hostages or you're in a public space. So for them,
Sure.
accuracy was absolutely couldn't be optional; it had to be paramount, and it was a matter of you know millimeters and speed was really important. So they came up with this really great system that allows you to have a very firm platform. It could hold a heavyweight kit, and then you could
Mhm.
track very you could track the shot very precisely. They were managing this business in the evenings and weekends, and their wife said, look, you have two choices. You can be a police officer, you can have Kofi Yeager, or you could be married to us, but you only can do two of those three things. And we knew them from the trade shows, and they had a great following. People respected what they're doing, and it was a great
Sure.
honor to have them come to us and trust us for the next step in that journey. Um, the We can come back to the branding strategy on that because it's kind of interesting how that evolved.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Um,
a really interesting one.
yeah, the next brand that we came out with after that was we acquired a company called BulletSafe, and then one of the first things we did with BulletSafe, the idea of BulletSafe is that we want uh, safety and security within reach of the people that need it for law
Mhm.
enforcement, for security
Mhm.
officers, and shoot, now even first responders and even teachers and stuff sometimes are looking to have protection like that. So we wanted to make it
Mhm.
accessible. First thing we did is we brought it to the U.S. and KGI certified to put a very high quality product we believed in on the marketplace, and that was a very different market for us. And that's been really exciting. I'm really excited to see both KGI and Kophjager if we go deeper into about the product life cycle and where we are with that brand story. Pretty excited about that. And then the most recent brand that we acquired was a brand called InForce, which is a tactical light. Again, another great technology, had great patents, and that company's founder passed away, and they were really needing somebody to take it forward. And again, another great
Sure.
opportunity to take a great legacy. Products are respected by NATO and our allies. Um, and to bring that to the marketplace, and now we're seeing traction and getting into law enforcement and things, U.S. and other international markets. So that's been really wonderful to see. Again, the technology and stuff marches forward. There's new things happening there as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
The newest
That's a
brand,
constant chase, I'm sure. The
what's that,
technology
Natalie?
piece. The technology piece is probably a constant chase, you know? I can't
Yeah,
imagine. Just in our softwares, it's a constant chase, so
the pace of change in our industry is absolutely crazy. How fast things are changing now, and now the barriers to entry and the marketplace is changing so rapidly. The things that worked in the past aren't going to work in the future, so we're constantly
Yeah.
having to adapt and change the way we do business. But we went back to our drawing board, which we looked for a market opportunity, and we created a brand identity that we thought the market needed, and we did it with Dark
Yep.
30, which is our latest brand. Dark 30 is designed to provide premium uh, image capabilities around an ecosystem of products that can detect things at great range and transmit information and process information,
Yeah.
whether
It's a
it's
great brand
vehicle,
name for it.
yeah,
I love it.
vehicles, handheld, even aerial platforms, and then especially very specially applications. So that brand is been really fun to watch, and markets responded really well to that. So, but
Yeah.
those are
Yeah.
the main brands that we work with. So our
Yeah,
main,
yeah. I mean,
pretty big
such a
family
great
now.
list, and each one is like so unique in its own way. But, how does somebody? Did you like grow up knowing I want to work in this industry? Number one, and number two, how did you go from a marketing? I think you said a marketing and sales consulting agency. How did you go
Right.
from there to where you are now?
That's a good question. I mean, the thing is, sometimes in life you have this like all these random experiences and things you study and read, and for me, it's like everything. My experiences, everything I've ever read, everything that I've been introduced to, somehow ended up becoming relevant in some art today. But that wasn't always the case. I was one of these people that was unfortunately always interested in something different and something new. So when I was a
Sure.
student, I drive my teachers crazy because I literally go to the library to study for an exam. This is college, and I'd be looking for a book for whatever I'm trying to, have a test the next day, and I come
Hmm.
across a book that's really interesting, and then I'd be
And
opening it
that
up,
one,
and
that one seemed like more fun.
yeah, 11 p.m. later, they're kicking me out of the library, and I haven't studied at all, and I have an 8 o'clock class for an exam. So but I learned some really great stuff, and it's funny how things come back. So I
Yeah.
think that, growing up, I had a great childhood with really rich experience. Just became, introduced to a lot of different things. I come from a good business family. My
Hmm.
grandfather was a self-made entrepreneur who, did some amazing things in business, and I grew up listening to him and learning from him. We had a cabin in northern Michigan, and he had a cabin on the same lake that I did, and I used to spend my summers and weekends were up there talking with him and learning about business and you know um, just great. But where we're in the great outdoors, that Michigan was my playground. So the
Yeah,
field.
I mean, the fishing opportunities, the hunting opportunities year round really in such unique ways in Michigan is pretty cool.
So I fell in love with the outdoors, and
Mhm.
my grandfather taught me how to shoot. I shot off. I learned how to shoot at I think 4 or 5 years old. I think the first time I shot at 22. And it wasn't very many days would go by without grabbing the 22, going to
Yeah.
or going down and shooting targets. So shooting was always fascinating for me. I used to read the Small Arms Review, which had all the rifles that were in production, and then I'd get the magazines and learn about all the new rifles and pistols and shotguns that were coming out. So I always
Mhm.
thought that was interesting, and the outdoors was interesting. But again, even my grandfather and my father were both business guys. My dad was a marketer. He had a marketing company called Target Marketing in Western
Oh, cool.
Michigan. And when I was in town, he would always be working the weekends, and I'd often go with him. And I'd sit at his
Mhm.
artist tables with all the great pens and all their great artist tools, and I'd pretend I'm doing graphic design and
You would
illustration.
come up with the next campaign is what you're saying.
I mean, I used to go over all their campaigns, and they had they had I guess, a sample room. They had a closet where they had all the
Mhm.
printing materials they had, and they used to have poster boards of their pitches and stuff. And
Oh,
my dad
cool.
talked a little bit about the work he used to do, work in New York with as a um, with the food industry. And so I used to learn about product development and marketing and product launches and the strategy that they did. And those were big brands or national brands that he worked with. So I always wanted to be in business and wanted. I love the idea of brands because people's lives end up becoming identified with those brands being
Yeah.
part of who they are.
Mhm.
Um, I love the outdoors and things. So, I didn't have a clear path industry. I didn't see a way that I could be paid to be in the shooting sports industry. So,
Sure.
I, in college actually it was political science history, pre-law. I want to go in
That
politics.
probably doesn't hurt you today, though,
You almost
being
have the law
pre-law.
degree to do what we do now, but
Yeah.
So I studied law and I enjoyed that. I studied history and political science, and I studied a lot of philosophy, a lot of religion, economics, all these things. I was a liberal arts student, and I decided I didn't want to run for office. I didn't want to have a law firm or a legal career. So I went back at my MBA, and at that point I was like, well, I'd really like to go into like defense industry related things, and so I applied to all the defense contractors in Dallas Fort Worth, which is a great area for defense.
Mhm.
And with my background, I was an engineer, I was not military, so I was qualified to be a lobbyist. It was the one thing that I could find a job in. I ended up turning that down and working for a controls technology company doing energy conservation. And I was in charge of a couple different things. At one point, I was in charge of a .com, led a sales force. I actually really enjoyed managing sales. I was very good at it,
Mhm.
and I enjoyed helping create something new. But as my time kind of working in that company, I really realized where Sunmark needed to come from, which is we needed a better way of working with sales and marketing together to bring products to the marketplace. That you needed both of them working succinctly, and that's something that we all
Mhm.
talk about in business school, but it's very difficult to execute where your sales and marketing
And
are
then you
working.
get in the office and sales and marketing generally don't agree. Yeah.
And that's where Sellmark's name came from, was the integration sales and marketing. That was our name of our
Oh, that's
agency.
cool. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So now it's the the house of brands that Sellmark has become. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's very cool. I'd never thought about that way. I assumed it had to do with your last name, and then Mark made sense for me for like the gun industry, right? And so like those two things together is where I went. But that's pretty cool to know
Yeah.
that that's actually not where it came from. I like that.
And yeah, Sitemark seemed to make sense too, right? That was first brand.
Yeah.
And yeah, but our first real success was launching a night vision brand back in 2003. And we haven't looked back since. So I love this industry. We have some great people in it.
Wow. Wow. I we didn't get to talk quite in that much detail last time around about your story, and I like so much of that makes like your story was already interesting. Now I'm way more interested, right? The fact that you went from like a sales marketing background to what you are today, like that. I think what I'm trying to say here is that I love that most people's paths that get to a level, a high level of success like yourself and others, it's usually not a very straight path, but somehow all the pieces ended up fitting together, right? Like the legal stuff probably really helped you. Working in technology really helped you. Working in sales really helped you. Working in marketing really helped you. And now all those things put together with your passion for shooting sports has become what it is. I think that sometimes people look for success in places that maybe they have no experience in or like no like ties to it all, right? And they just see it as like, oh well, they make plenty of money as a doctor or whatever, right? But maybe your life story doesn't blend together to make you a good doctor, right? Maybe that isn't a fit for you, and maybe you need to take all those things that you've done over life, jam them all together, and then figure out, okay, what does that make as a company? And I think like just listening to your story, it sounds like that's sort of, even if it's by accident, what you ended up doing, right, with Sellmark.
A lot of our successes were by accident, but we ran with them once we saw what was happening. But
Yeah.
a funny story. I went back because I wanted to go into business, and I got my MBA from UTA, University of Texas at
Mhm.
Arlington. And one of my classes was a strategy class, and
Mhm.
I wrote a paper on, because we studied you do one thing and do it well, right? That was the
Mhm.
really the gist of the strategy class. And I thought about, well, if you're not the first into a new industry like automotive or airlines or computers or AI or whatever, then how do you make a space for yourself? So I wrote a paper
Right.
saying that what you need to do is identify the areas that the customers are not getting the service or they're getting the solution they're looking for. And if it's
Mhm.
small, then bring a few of those together and create brands to identify it, and then try to move into the mainstream, grow your brand in there. And I think there's a good strategy behind it. I gotta see if if I don't remember, I think it was C or D. I had like one of the
Turns
worst.
out they were wrong. You
The,
shouldn't have gotten a D.
he says it's too hard to manage. It's difficult. And the sad thing is now, if I was to write that paper again, I'd agree with them. It is too difficult to try to do too many brands, but you got to organize and get the right team to execute.
Sure.
But
Sure.
but if you don't, you have what opportunity you have. So you need to figure out how you solve the market's problem with what you can deliver. And if you're a $4 million, $10 million max potential for your brand, and you want to be a $50 million something, or you want to grow bigger than that, what are you gonna do?
You're
You
gonna
know,
have
you're gonna
to
have to pivot.
expand somehow. Yeah.
You have to do something. So
Yeah,
anyway,
it's you know what I think I love too about your story is that that your products grew both out of startup and out of acquisition. Like those two pieces are very different things to think about, right? As you're growing brands. My husband and I actually have looked at acquiring a couple of companies. We're on a teeny scale compared to what you guys are doing there at Sellmark. But when we analyze brands, one of the things that we're looking at is like, man, at least I don't have to start from ground zero, right? Like maybe I'm starting from the first floor or the second floor rather than zero. And it's interesting how those two different types of business startup, whether it's acquiring something and growing it as a small brand when you acquired it, or by building something from nothing, those two stories are really, really different until they sort of converge after a while. What did that look like, sort of in contrast between the brands from you guys, and how did you manage one or the other from like a brand launch perspective? Maybe the one I can't say, the police started brand, maybe
KGI.
that one, KGI, thank you. Maybe KGI is a great example of that.
Yeah. It's it's interesting. Every brand in every market's got its really unique kind of elements to it, and
Mhm.
what makes one product line or one brand successful is not always the same. One of the things that I think that was most shocking to me is like, okay, have these customers and you buy this brand, and all your customers be lining up to buy it because it's better when they're currently buying. But you have to change the way you go to market. You have to retell that brand story, and you have to give context and show how that brand will help further, that customers, own journey and help their customers in a unique way. And the problem is it doesn't happen with like, when we launched the first brand, we had to pound the pavement. We had to scream at the top of our lungs, this is what we're trying to do. I remember going, and I shouldn't say the retailer, but I went to some major national retailers and say Sitemark's got the best red dots, rifle scopes, and laser sights and foresights, all this stuff. And they're like, no, no one's going to ever hunt with the AR-15. There's no one's going to ever shoot a deer or go night hunting with that. You're insane. The market's too small. We're not interested, and that's going to be scaring off our customers and whatnot. And so after 7 years of telling them they got to do it, then they jump on it. But you got to find those, especially if you're doing something new. You're going to have to find people willing to try
Mhm.
something new, and then help them be
Mhm.
successful. Do those things with them to train them and develop the customer base. In the case of the AR-15, the customers were there. They just didn't have a place to go to outfit their rifles and accessorize it. So in that regard, it's challenging because if you go bring a new brand back to that market, like now we have InForce, for example. I got a American made. Everyone says they want American made products, and everybody wants the mil spec standard and the top end stuff, and we delivered that. And initially bringing that brand to those stores took some effort. The stores didn't see the value, but also I think part of it is we're expecting it to be easy because take your brand that they know you for, you come out with a new product. Of course they want to try it. Well, if you come out with a new brand, a different position, a different buyer, even
Mhm.
you have to retell the story. And I think we become complacent. We don't tell the brand story. We don't. We assume that they know what it is, but the biggest fallacy we have is that people don't know Um, what you're doing, Leslie, tell them, and you have to tell
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
multiple times, and you can't quit. You got to keep going. I think that I see that with the M&A activity and acquisition in our space. So many people bought brands, um, and been part of really great brand portfolios that just ended not doing well. Here's a company with more resources, better marketers, better design, better distribution, better all these things, and they buy a company, and that brand doesn't do as well as it did as a founder running out of his garage. So I've
Yeah.
seen that in our industry time and time again. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's true of all industries really, I think sometimes if you don't tell that brand story like you're saying, you don't kind of repeat it until if you're not tired of it, you haven't said it enough times, right? If you're the owner of that brand. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's such a big thing. Something that you said earlier that really stood out to me was that you need to create brands where people feel a part of that brand or feel identified with that brand when you were talking about young people and I think it was one of the earlier brands Firefield I think maybe it was but
Yes.
you were talking about how young people and really making a space where they could see themselves in it and that concept is such a strong one I think. Can you talk a little bit more about how maybe you guys have done that across other brands or how you did that with Firefield for example?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, in Firefield specifically, I think when you're trying to attract a customer, um, that is not a diehard user. You're talking about somebody that's a teenager or 20 something. Um,
Hmm.
you know, so what we realizing that the younger people, if you looked at their profile of the younger demographics, they were um more sedentary. They've been doing more things inside. They watch more TV, play a lot of video games. So we're like, okay,
Hmm.
why don't we communicate a brand about the outdoors in a way that's familiar to them, which is, more energy, more, and I think, appealing towards the better self. Like, they don't want to just be pretending to do these things. They want to go out and learn how to hunt and shoot. They play survival games or they play Call of Duty, and they want to be the hero. They want to be the leading actor. They want to be the person that saves the day. And a lot
Yeah.
of, we started with Americans. I think a lot of American youth today didn't have fathers that were showing them how to be strong men. And
Mhm.
so they filled that gap in with now it's probably even worse, social media and all this other stuff. But in those days, more computers and movies and stuff. And
Mhm.
just trying to be like an actor or whatever. So we wanted to tell that as a invitation for them to become a part of something bigger and greater, start living out their better life by showing that they're
Mm.
capable and
Live in
competent.
real world and not virtual world.
Yeah. So, in that, I think that works because you see during that time you saw this rise in like three gun, and you saw a rise in a lot of shooting sports. We did see a lot of young people go to the range, and honestly, most of it was plinking, people just shooting targets. Because I think for you could buy an AR-15 for a few $100s, put a fire field optic on it, and then you go to the range and you start hitting paper, and you are a man. You can do it. And the
Mhm.
same thing with women. I try and leave the women out because I think at the same time, women are called upon to be, leaders and resilient and independent and all these things. Well, we need moms to be able to, we need people to be parents and responsible, and we need men and
Mhm.
women both to be responsible and take action and be able to raise kids, in these traditions. So we did see a secondary effect of getting it into new demographics and start seeing, the base increase, which is important for all the brands in the outdoor space. So that was really
Yeah.
great. I hope that the people look back, especially if they went on to be competitive shooters or, marksmen or, join the military or they went out and end up being great hunters. I hope they look back and say, that Sitemark or the Firefield that I bought, which was my first optic, I learned and did great with it, and I became passionate about it and led to really great things. So, Firefield was that gateway product to get people into the hunting and shooting sports. So, which is great. We always say that then site marks where they go to perfect their skill set. So anyway, it's been fun to see
Yeah.
the different brands speak to people, and then people identify with the precision, the detail, the technology that you do. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. How does that contrast with a brand like Pulsar, right? Pulsar is obviously a little different products and things like that, but also higher end and more I think you're looking at people who are already pretty in it, right? Um, Talk a little bit about the Pulsar brand. How does that contrast between the two?
Yeah. Well, the thing with Pulsar, by its very nature, is designed from the get go to be the premier image quality for night hunting.
Mhm.
When we're familiar with that space. We saw a shift happening in the technology. We saw the ending of the mass consumer night vision devices using intensifier tubes, which is the early technology that we started with. We saw that losing ground, and we saw the early digital systems start showing its capability. What we really got us excited about a couple things. One, if you know anything about computers and electronics, is they get cheaper and they get
Mhm.
better,
Mhm.
um, which is exciting. The other thing you know about it is it's something that you can capture the image and share it.
Mhm.
Um, so what a great way to start sharing that experience is now you can get people to go out and do amazing things, and then they get to brag about it. They put it on
Yeah.
YouTube, they put it on social
Tag
media,
us, you know?
and people are like, "Oh my gosh, you can actually go out and do that," and that social aspect of Pulsar has been really interesting. But it's
Mhm.
interesting because the early adapters of Pulsar, I would say, were your military, retired military, people that use thermal in combat, people that were using more advanced night vision systems like the military systems for hunting. And they were the early adapters on the thermal technology when we moved that space. And initially, um, that was a kind of a market that emerged. There really wasn't a mass market thermal market until Pulsar entered that space, and
Sure.
the market just got getting bigger. I always felt that like it was going to get big, but I didn't know how big it would get and how quickly it would expand. Just like a few years ago, the growth was getting harder to keep up with. We're having issues of maintaining capacity, and it became very
Sure.
focused on how do we improve capacity to keep up with the market. And I would say that we probably left the underbelly of that market wide open by not addressing the full consumer demand for the new shooters that people want to go in. And now it wasn't eight
Mhm.
thousand dollars a device you can get in the sport for less than 2,000. So
Mhm.
Pulsar wasn't addressing, and that market is very large, and Sitemark is trying to address um, the kind of
Kind of the
mass.
consumer gap sort of there. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
really
it's kind
interesting.
of nice to have two brands that speak to different consumers in very important segments. And having some technology crossover allows us to take the technology and make sure we adopt it to other parts of the market. A brand like Pulsar couldn't go, so it's actually been pretty useful and beneficial to have the multiple brand approach in that regard.
Yeah. One of the things that we haven't talked about yet much, and I mentioned it earlier, is the ranch. Sellmark Ranch, obviously, you guys have a lot of sort of plans for it as far as like event space and things like that. But one of the things that really struck me when we were there is that you guys really built yourselves a space to be able to test these products, take clients to test the products, and really have a real experience with the Cellmark products in the field, either at a range or in a hunting type situation. Can we tell that story just a little bit about Cellmark Ranch and kind of why and what all you've built there?
Okay. Um, Sellmark Ranch was something that should never been possible. Never thought that that's something that I would do. Um, I never grew up on a farm, never raised animals. It wasn't my background. But when we would go around the world and we would take people out to go shooting or hunting, you go to these amazing ranges or you go to the great hunting grounds. um that's where like things really happen, where you have like your influencers, the media people, your engineers, your market leaders and stuff all come together, and you shoot products, you talk about the sport and the industry and where it's going. We felt like there's something missing, like we need a place where we could take some clients and show them the new things in the field, so it wasn't just theoretical, it was actually getting their hands on there. And then we would like a way to share it with the public as well and tell those stories. So long story short, in 2020, everyone's locked down. There was a lot going on. So um, we decided to go start looking for some property. And I made a couple investments during 2020. I said, well, whatever we get out of these investments, I'll put towards a ranch and whatever it looks like. So we're looking at a 100 acre, 200 acre spot. and drove all over. My wife and I, her dad, had some friends come along at different points. So it was like all over the place, looking at all these places. And our the broker that's helping us is like, man, there's this property you got to look at. It's 4,000 acres or something. And I was like, man, that is way too much.
You're
We just need
like, that's a lot different than what we talked about, but
yeah,
sure.
that's way different. And then so he sent me a location. He said, just come down. It's an hour and a half from Dallas. I said, well, I did want it an hour and a half or so from Dallas would be perfect. And then when he showed me the address on the map, it was within a mile or two of where I dropped a pinpoint, where I
Wow, that's cool.
45, and I was like, this is such a beautiful country. I'd love to have a place here someday. So when we drove on the property, it just really spoke to us. It was beautiful. It was just, it's probably meant to be. The sun was out, it was cloudy, clouds, but just like picturesque. Everything was lush and green. So anyway, we ended up putting four ranches together in one contiguous property, which no one does anymore, or rarely does.
Mhm.
So I
Usually
think
they break them apart, so I love
yeah,
that you put them together.
we ended up with the second largest contiguous property, as far as I understand, in our county.
Oh, cool.
Um, but it was so anyways meant to be, and so now we have a place that really can be a great place to test new industry products and get thought leaders together, create content, share with dealers, influencers, and tell that story, and continuously evolving the technology that gives people another reason to open their wallets and make the investment and then do more outdoors and imagine them doing something even more incredible. So the ranch has been extremely beneficial for that standpoint. And now, we have a separate team. The ranch is now set up as a separate business so they can be fully utilized. And, it's set up as a regenerative agricultural location to improve and to improve the land and the soil, create more wildlife corridors. They're doing regenerative agriculture with cattle and sheep to mimic the old bison that used to come through. They're using
Mhm.
their prescribed burns, and it's been interesting to see this transformation of the land. It's just getting even more healthy and more productive. And now we have
Mhm.
this element where we have experience opportunities to bring people in and families. I mean, we've dozens of families shot their first deer together. Now there's a range, there's a lake, people go fishing. So it's just become a great outdoor destination too. So if it's not being used for an industry event or a training type thing, families are going out there and making those memories and stuff, which is awesome, and I love that.
Yeah, yeah, especially in the state of Texas where there's so little public land. So I wasn't born in Oregon, but I was raised in Oregon most of my life. In Oregon, I don't remember our exact percentage, but it's like I don't 40-ish% of our land is public land. Like it's a significant portion of our state. Oregon's not as big as Texas, but we have a lot of public land. And here it's very common that, if you're hunting or fishing or whatever, it's a public land experience, right? We're sort of hunting for the private land experience. But when you're in Texas, it's sort of the opposite. Like there really isn't a lot of public land in Texas, really at all. So being able to create yourself a space really generates an experience that doesn't exist for the general public anyway in the state of Texas.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that we got to figure out. We got to figure out a way to protect the land. I think you have to make it productive. And typically, we have this fight someplace now between ranchers and farmers and hunters, and I think they need to work together. You need all of them, like this hog thing. The farmers and ranchers need the hunters
They
to
need
take care
them
of.
gone, and the hunters would like to take care of them.
So I think in order to open up more lands and stuff, I think hunters and stuff need to extend a helping hand and treat the land, as if they owned it and show respect to the owner. And I think we do more of that to create more opportunities. But if you do have land, you know share it. If you can bring friends and family on there. I think it's important. Um, but man, we got to protect some of this land. I don't know. This is a segue, but I drive around and I see solar. We had a company want to buy solar, offered us a tremendous amount of money to cover the property and solar panels. And I
Mhm.
know that's a green energy, which, okay, maybe it makes sense when the distribution isn't available. But why would you
Mhm.
take your best farmland and cover it with solar panels? It makes no sense to me.
Mhm.
Um,
They
you know,
we are so on the same page on this, and I love it. Like,
yeah, and like,
we need to find a way to cover all of our buildings in, like, metropolitan areas, cover all those with center solar panels
great.
first.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, use your metropolitan. I mean, all the streets and all this concrete. Let's cover that up? I don't know.
Parking
I,
garages, whatever. Yeah.
yeah, I'm right there with you. We got to do more to protect our our agriculture base. I mean, I look at what's happening with the farms being chopped up and become less productive. I think there's less farmers. I don't know how far back, but we're losing the number of farms and farmers, and
Mm.
um, that way of life's going away. And I think there's something worth preserving. So
Yeah, for sure.
we
It's
gotta
a
figure that
fight
one out.
in
We
the
haven't figured
ag
that one out yet, but
industry.
we have to.
Well, I think we could probably spend a couple hours on that topic if we really let me let go. But yeah, I think something that really stands out to me about you and about Cellmark and just your story is just your ability to see wins coming ahead of time, right? You're seeing something, you're like, man, this thing's gonna work, right? It's gonna take us a minute. It's gonna take some years and effort, but it's gonna work and I can feel it. And I think that that's not something that everyone has, the ability to like sort of see it coming, or at least be confident enough to be like, yep, this is one to really invest in. And I really appreciate kind of getting to watch that story, hear a little bit more about it from you, and hope it sounds like we're going to have a few more conversations because the number of questions that I have are ridiculous. But um,
Look
I
forward to it
really
anytime. Yeah.
appreciate it. Yeah.
No, we're all in this. I think it's so great what you're doing, sharing, best practices, experiences. Definitely you create the information and passion that we need. We need more business. We need more people to dream big and come up with new ideas and bring them to the marketplace and not being willing to quit. Stay with it. You believe in something, go for it. So I love what you do. I love your message, and glad to be a part of it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And we'll put links at the bottom of this podcast blog as well to all the Cellmark everything. And thank you. Appreciate your time.
Excellent. Thank you, Natalie. Enjoyed it very much.
Thanks.